Welcome to this shortwave radio channel, and this is another in the series of checking out the HF for shortwave frequency allocations, megahertz by megahertz. What do we have in there in these frequency ranges? So we are now talking about 24 to 25 megahertz, probably one of those bands or that megahertz range where you might have never heard anything in some cases. I've seldom heard things in that range except a little more often at the top of the range because there's an amateur band. But I would say that in times of high solar activity, I might have heard some activity, but there's not a lot of stuff happening in this range in general. Technically, from 24 all the way up to 24,890, it's utility stations of all sorts. It is kind of tagged as mobile, land mobile, and stuff like that. So there might be all sorts of things in there that could be on that frequency range. If you look at allocations, I've looked at some of the frequencies. I have seen all sorts of things there, including like Civil Air Patrol, and there's some military stuff that pop up here and there. Different countries around the world have a use for this band in different aspects, but honestly, there's really not a lot of activity here. It, of course, is very dependent on solar activity because it's a high frequency in the shortwave spectrum. As you see here, there's like really nothing, and the lines that you see there are just spurious signals. They're not even signals that are actually on the frequency range. There's one part where I heard a lot of stuff when activity is actually available, when solar activity is higher, or if there's some sporadic ESCIP, and it's the 24,890 to 24,990. This is what is called the 12-meter amateur band. It's a small band. It's only 100 kilohertz wide. It has, of course, it's divided roughly into the same types of use as other bands. CW on the bottom portion, starting at 24,890. Bottom part of 24,900, there's some digital modes in there, and there's of course single sideband. Upper sideband mode is used in this band when you hear activity. I heard a lot of activity, not that much. It doesn't seem to be one of the biggest bands to be used, but I do hear stuff when activity or when propagation is actually there. I do hear some activity, and I did hear a lot of activity in the past in there. So it's what we call one of the WARC bands. These were amateur bands that were added later after the major HF bands were there, and they have one particular thing. When there's contests on the amateur bands, the WARC bands are not included. You cannot contest on the WARC bands. So it's often more active when there are contests because all the non-contesters will go to the WARC bands to have quiet conversations and not be disturbed by all the stations in the different amateur contests. So a quiet band, but like I always like to say, always tune from time to time. You never know what can pop up in here in the 24 megahertz to 25 megahertz region of the shortwave spectrum. Hope you enjoy our look at the spectrum, megahertz by megahertz. If you do, please subscribe, give us thumbs up, and thank you for watching our videos.